Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Biodiversity is the greatest treasure we have. Its diminishment is to be prevented at all cost. Professor Dr. M. Afshar Alam, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Jamia Hamdard, Professor Amjad Abdi, Director, Center for Environment and Sustainable Development, Jamia Hamdard, Speaker of today's program, Professor Dr. K.C. Bansal, former Director, NBPGR, Indian Council for Agricultural Research, Secretary, National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, Dr. Fazlur Rahman, Dr. Monica Safi, Member CESD, delegates and students. A very warm good morning to one and all present here. I, Jamal Fatima, take this opportunity to welcome you all on behalf of Center for Environment and Sustainable Development, Jamia Hamdard, to the celebration on International Day for Biological Diversity 2023. The International Day for Biological Diversity, or World Biodiversity Day, is a United Nations sanctioned international day for the promotion of biodiversity issues. It is observed every year on May 22nd. To mark this incredible and historic achievement, the proposal for this year's theme is From Agreement to Action, Build Back Biodiversity. This theme builds on the results of the United Nations Biodiversity Conference ended in Montreal, Canada, with the Landmark Agreement to guide global action on nature through to 2030. And I also would like to inform you that Center for Environment and Sustainable Development of Jamia Hamdard has been doing an admirable work under the leadership of Professor Amjad Abedin, and by conducting such workshop or programs, trying to contribute in the same direction for creating awareness to conserve biodiversity. So let us begin the program by invoking God's blessings. So I would like to request and invite Dr. Fazlur Rahman Sahab to recite few verses from the Holy Quran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا طَائِرٍ يَطِيرُ بِجَنَاحَيْهِ إِلَّا أُمَمٌ أَمْثَالُكُمْ. Allah says in the Quran, the name of the chapter is An'am, that is the cattle, and there is no creature on this earth or bird that flies with its wing except that they are communities like you. Here Allah Ta'ala has used the word communities for animals and plants, and the definition of community as per the dictionary is a group living in the same place or having a particular characteristics in common. Plants and animals have been mentioned in Quran at various places. In fact, more than 10 chapters of the Quran have been named after animals and plants. Cattle, An'am; spider, Ankabut; bees, An-Namal; ant. And Allah Ta'ala also commands to preserve this. We have two references from Quran. The first is when the entire earth was under flood, Allah Ta'ala commanded Prophet Nuh alayhi salam to preserve every species of animal species. And also at the second place, when Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam was marching, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered that take care of the ants. So the meaning of this, the message is that these plants and animals, pomegranate have been mentioned, plants have been, grapes have been mentioned. And Allah Ta'ala says again in the Quran in another place, وَقُلُوا وَاشْرُبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. That use these plants, animals, eat and drink, but do not be extravagant, do not cross the boundaries set up by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as long as we are fulfilling our needs, it is good, but the moment we try to cross the boundaries set up by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are going to have problems. And in order to emphasize this, we have today's function. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Fazlur Rahman Sahab, for sharing such a meaningful message from Holy Quran. Thank you very much. Professor MZ Avdeen, Director, Center for Environmental and okay, so I would like to invite Director for CEST to deliver the welcome.
Good morning to all of you. Let me first welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Afshar Alam Saab, who has given us time from his precious time. Actually, he is very busy, but he has given us time. So thank you, sir. Dr. Professor Bansal, he is today's, he will be delivering today's lecture. You already know he is a person of a scientist of par excellence and very eminent scientist, and he has been the former director of NBPGR, ICR, working in this area. So he will be giving you very pertinent knowledge related to the biodiversity and how it is helping us in our betterment of our lives. Okay. Actually, I welcome all the teachers, faculty members, members of the CEST committee, and students to this event. As we already know that biodiversity is a broad phrase that refers to the diversity and variability of life on Earth. It is self-evident that the ecological world's equilibrium is required for survival. Every year on May 22, the International Day for Biological Diversity is celebrated to value the biodiversity. The United Nations General Assembly designated May 22 as International Day for Biological Diversity in December 2000, when the United Nations conducted its Earth Conference in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992. A special emphasis was placed on environmental conservation and protection. The purpose of the day is to raise awareness about the environment and all species that live on this planet. It also encourages people to recognize and address similar concerns and issues. We, the humans, the most evolved species on the planet, have a tendency to overlook its importance. Under the guise of development or progress, certain man-made activities end up destroying biological diversity. And now it's time for us to take notice and contribute to make the Earth a more welcoming habitat for all forms of life. The theme of International Day for Biological Diversity for this year is From Agreement to Action, Build Back Biodiversity. And this year is special in terms of biodiversity conservation. A historic agreement was signed in December 2022 that sets goals and concrete measures to stop and reverse the loss of nature by 2050. That is why the theme of the International Day for Biological Diversity is From Agreement to Action. The slogan promotes the idea that now that we have an action plan agreed upon at a global level, we must implement all the measures that the agreement contemplates before 2030. Only in this way, we will be able to obtain protected and sustainable biological diversity by 2050. That is the main message from the Convention on Biological Diversity, the key international instrument for sustainable development. This day is extremely significant in today's world, given the type of lifestyle we lead. It's biodiversity that not only provides a home for many of the world's species, but also serve as a source of food, medicine, and other resources that we rely on to thrive. Understanding the value of diversity and not only acknowledging but resolving the problems is need of the hour, and we have to place this day that we will value biodiversity and protect it. So with these words, actually, I invite again our colleague to go on to let the function.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words of wisdom. Now it's time for the felicitation of our guest. So I take privilege to bid a very warm welcome to our announced speaker, Professor K.C. Bansal, sir, who took out his valuable time and joined us today to be part of this event. We are honored to have you here, sir. I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to please welcome our respected Speaker of Excellence, Professor K.C. Bansal, sir, with a plant. Now, I would request Director CESD, Professor MZ Abdeen sir, to please present a planter to our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, Professor M. Afshar Alam, who has been working immensely in achieving the mission and core goals of this great institution. Thank you, sir. Now I request Vice Chancellor sir and Professor K.C. Bansal sir to please present the planter to Professor MZ Abdeen sir, the Director CESD, who is tirelessly working in taking the center towards the new heights. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I am profoundly delighted to have this opportunity to introduce the Speaker of Excellence for the day, Professor K.C. Bansal, sir, former Director, NBPGR, ICAR, and Secretary, National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Professor Bansal, though need no introduction, he is a renowned scientist who contributed significantly in the area of plant biotechnology and has published over 150 research papers and book chapters. Professor Bansal obtained his PhD with gold medal from the country's premier institute, the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. After obtaining his PhD degree, he pursued the advanced research from Harvard University, Cambridge. Since his return from USA, he occupied the eminent position in ICAR as the professor at IARI, New Delhi. He was the first one to get selected for the prestigious Norman Borlaug Chair for the crop improvement by the ICAR in India. He is among the Board of Directors, Global Plant Council, and member Board of Trustees, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, Chennai. Professor Bansal has won several awards at the national and international levels. To cite a few, the highest award of the ICAR for an individual's contribution, the Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Award, the Indian Science Congress Award conferred upon by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the Biotech Career Award of the Rockefeller Foundation, USA, the Recognition Award of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, and the prestigious Haryana Vigyan Ratan Award, which was conferred upon by the Honorable Governor and Chief Minister of Haryana. The second highest award of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences by the Honorable Minister. Okay. So with the long list of his achievements and glory, I request Professor K.C. Bansal, sir, to please come upon the dais and enlighten us with his talk.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. And I'm so very pleased and thankful and grateful to the Honorable Vice Chancellor of this great university, Jamia Hamdard, to give me this opportunity to come and talk to you all on this very auspicious day, the International Day for Biodiversity, International Day for Biological Diversity on May 22nd, which happens to be in 2023, the Monday, the starting of the week. I'm very thankful to you, sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, also Dr. Professor Abdeen, the Director of the Center for Environment and Sustainable Development, a newly started department, which is in fact need of the hour, that he has given this opportunity, to me to speak on this particular day. And I wish you all a very happy Biodiversity Day. And I've been coming to Jamia Hamdard quite often. I'm very fond of actually coming to Jamia Hamdard on various occasions. I've been even coming as an examiner, external examiner for very many PhD students, conducting some courses, giving some lectures. And I'm today quite pleased to be meeting our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has also got a great interest in agriculture and who is himself a champion of sustainable development, as I just learned. So in fact, it's double the advantage to me that I'm meeting a person who himself is chairing today's session, who is having a lot of knowledge, and we would be happy to interact with him some more, and for the benefit of the university and national level. So with this few words of introduction, I would like to innovations for conservation and utilization of agrobiodiversity for sustainable development. So you see here, everything is so very important. The emphasis I'll be giving on conservation and utilization of agrobiodiversity. But how do we do it? We have been doing it in the past for the last more than 100 years, or thousands of years, or even 10,000s of years since the agriculture started. But now, in this 21st century, it is much more important to not only conserve, which we have been doing for the last thousands of years, but now even utilize it for sustainable development. And we have been utilizing it also, actually speaking, through the process of, when we talk of agriculture, through the process of plant breeding, conventional plant breeding. But then we have now, in fact, the whole world is talking about biotechnological advances, biotechnological innovations. So I'll be giving you a gist at the end of my presentation that how these biotechnological innovations can also help us, not only in conservation, but also mostly in utilization of this agrobiodiversity. And why do we utilize this agrobiodiversity? For our own survival, for the benefit of the society at large, for the benefit of the environment, and as was mentioned, for the benefit of all plants, animals together. We all make this, society. Okay. And in fact, last, sir, the Biodiversity Day in 2022, I was invited by the United Nations CBD to give a message, a written message. And there the message I had given was this. As I was thinking, 5 points message, one of them was, I still remember, was this, that this planet belongs to all of us, all the species, not only to human beings, all the species, birds and animals, we were talking about it, and with equal rights. So therefore, sustainable development means we must not harm the environment, we must preserve it, and we must protect it. As Dr. Abdin also mentioned, the whole agenda of the sustainable development is also to protect the environment, what are the best way we can. So these are therefore the tools I will be talking about it. What are those biotechnological tools? How do we conserve and protect and use this biodiversity? Particularly, I'm going to talk about crops, agriculture, actually speaking, and then how can we make use of all this, biodiversity, agrobiodiversity for sustainable development. And, these are the sustainable developmental goals. There are 17 of them, but I'll be referring to mostly goal number 2, which pertains to ending hunger, achieving food security, and achieve improved nutrition. And that too, we achieve all this, ending hunger or achieve food security or achieve improved nutrition by promoting sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is therefore very, very important. And then science-based solutions, are needed for promoting sustainable agriculture. For example, we're talking of goal number 2. And goal number 2, when we talk of ending hunger, we must therefore feed the growing population always, happily. Okay. And what do we need for that? We need increasing the crop yields and land use efficiency. It's very important. Making crop plants more resistant to insect pest diseases, drought, and high temperature, because we need to make these plants tolerant to various stresses which are emerging, pest, biotic or abiotic stresses. Improving nutrition is very important. And again, important is, while we were doing this before, increasing crop yields, making crop plants resistant to biotic and abiotic stresses, also improving nutrition. But now, today, we are realizing with much more seriousness the problem of climate change. So therefore, we must try to help our farmers to adapt to this fast changing climate, if you want to achieve the above 3 goals. So therefore, on my right, you will see here, which we were not talking before, as breeding objectives, all as biotechnological tools utilization, adaptation to climate change. Now we are talking about it, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture, how that can be minimized, can be mitigated. Then also minimizing farming inputs, how can we minimize the use of fertilizers and pesticides, keep the environment clean, but at the same time produce more, have high yield. And then finally, increasing carbon sequestration back to the soils is very important, because the soils also need to be very healthy. They're also living organisms by themselves. That's also a big part of biodiversity. So we must also preserve it, and we can preserve by plowing back the carbon, which is otherwise being utilized, by the plants and other, microbes present in the soil. So therefore, it's in wholesome totality, we need to take care of the environment, we need to take care of the agriculture and, and sustainable development. So then agrobiodiversity, when we talk of sustainable development, plays a very big role. As you can see here, there are certain areas I've listed 4 of them, where I'm saying that these are the key areas for use of agrobiodiversity, or I convert it now to plant genetic resources, and I've underlined is essential. It's not optional. We must, as students, you must be aware, you must be talking about it, biological diversity not only need to be protected, yes, conserved, yes, but it must be utilized. And particularly the plant genetic resources utilization is essential for adapting to climate change, for ensuring food security, protecting nutrition security, and again ensuring sustainable agriculture. And we have not been using, I must tell you, as an agricultural scientist in this area for the last now 40 years, we have not been using agrobiodiversity to the extent that we were supposed to use it in the last, let's say, for example, 100 years. We have not been. Earlier, we were depending only on agrobiodiversity, but now we are talking of high-yielding cultivars, which are high-yielding. They use a lot of fertilizers, use a lot of water. They damage the environment, which is important to produce more food. But now, since we are damaging the environment to such a great extent, we must halt the further declaration, of the damaging the environment. So therefore, use of agrobiodiversity becomes very important. Unfortunately, India, as you can see here on the map, there are 34 hotspots of biodiversity around the world. 34. And how many countries in the world? More than 200. India alone has, out of those 34, 4 of them. As you can see here, you can see in Himalayas, you can see in Western Ghat, you can see in, northeast part of India, you can see also Andaman Nicobar. So these 4 hotspots out of 34 in the world, they exist in India. And then again, as I said before, we need to protect, but what has been happening in the past? There's a loss of agrobiodiversity due to rapid changing climate. It's obvious, we have noticed it, it's recorded. And therefore, you can see here climate change causing the weakened agriculture, because climate change has an adverse impact on agriculture. And that is also further causing to the loss of agrobiodiversity, as written here. And also, therefore, there's a concern of food security. That is also actually need to be, taken care because it's threatened. And you can see here just one agrobiodiversity picture. I've shown you how much diversity we have in case of tomato. What we eat is only one kind of tomato, or 2 or 3 at the most, different kinds of varieties of tomatoes. But you here see there are thousands of them, actually. And I'll give you some numbers when I talk to you about, about the biodiversity we have conserved. So the crop diversity on one hand is essential for future food and nutrition security, but it's rapidly disappearing. Remember, it's rapidly disappearing, in particular due to accelerated climate change. So we need to do both. We need to conserve, protect, and we need to utilize it further, because through utilization also you conserve. But the question is, now Convention of Biological Diversity, as Dr. Professor Abdin talked about it, I'm sure our Honorable Vice Chancellor is a champion in this area of research. Convention on Biological Diversity in the world came into being in 1993. 1993, about 30 years ago, right? And 196 members are there of this, CBD convention. 196 country members. India is also signatory to CBD. So the need was to protect this biodiversity, conservation of biological diversity. These are the objectives, sustainable use of its components, and third part, let's not talk about it today. Remember the first two, that is conservation and sustainable use of this agrobiodiversity. So when we talk of conservation of these agricultural biodiversity, particularly plant genetic resources, I'm talking about agriculture, food crops, right? What are the levels that we have been able to conserve, this at the global level? At the global level, you can see here on the world map, there are some names given on the left and some dots shown on the right world map. You can see some green ones, some yellow ones. Yellow ones are the big national gene banks, or the gene banks which belong to international CG centers, Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research, CGIAR centers. There are 11 of them, including one in India, ICRISAT, CIMMYT in wheat, and maize in Mexico. Then IRRI, International Rice Research Institute in Philippines, in Manila, Potato CIP in Peru, like that. There are 11 of them, and they conserve in a gene bank, ex-situ we call it, not under field conditions where they are naturally grown or their natural habitat. They are being taken out, those seeds, as we conserve them. So these are the pictures shown here, in this world map you can see, and here you can see these are the dots where so many of them are there. How many gene banks are there we have in the world? 1,750 gene banks. Gene banks are where these seeds are preserved under -20 degrees Celsius for posterity. For 100 years, could be 500 years, could be 1,000 years, even more. We need to conserve them, preserve them. In India, I'll talk to you about it. We have a seed bank, as mentioned here in India, which is an NBPGR, which I had the pleasure of working there. And this seed bank conserves more than 4.5 lakhs more than 4.5 lakhs and seed samples, in vitro in tissue culture tubes, cryo in minus, in liquid nitrogen, 12,000 samples. And this seed bank is so famous in the world that people all try to visit. And this picture I'm showing you particularly, this is Lady Mrs. Mary Haga, who was a one-time minister in Norway. And then this is our own Professor Swaminathan, Director General of DRDO, and all others, they are there. So this is the kind of status we have of the National Gene Bank. And that is the second largest gene bank in the world. Second largest gene bank in the world. And then also I should tell you, if you go back previous slide, 1 second. In the previous slide, I forgot to tell you, see this red dot near here, near the North Pole, this is also one gene bank of its own kind. And that gene bank is here, I'm talking about it, which is the International Gene Bank, where there is a global permafrost facility in this near North Pole, which is conserving these planetary resources forever. And this is what is the structure shown here as a tunnel in a hill. And from India, we were fortunate, the first official visit, I managed it, by the way. It was so very important, and along with Mr. Ashish Bahuganan, the Secretary of Agriculture, Dr. Mandal, the Director General of DRDO, Government of India, and myself, we were the first visit, on April 9, 2014, and we deposited some seeds with Indian flag and all this banner, we put it there, and which is conserved here, in fact, some of the seeds. And this conservation is now going on for the last many, many years. And there are about over 1 million samples already conserved, and we have a presence there of India. Now, when we talk of utilization of these by the breeders, when I had an opportunity, in working in NBPGR, National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, where we have this National Gene Bank, which is the second largest in the world, when we have got thousands of samples of each crop conserved, but they were conserved. They were being studied, but in hundreds, 200s, 500s, 1,000, like that. But I said, I'm here only like for 5 years. We have that tenure. So we were having 22,000 accessions or samples of wheat. I wanted to characterize it all in 1 year. Against, they were doing 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 at the most. I said, no, I would like to do it all in 1 year. And we were fortunate. I had a whole team of students like you, boys and girls, all faculty members, Beldars, everybody came around together. I was one of those Beldars, doing the sowing in the field, watering the plants, large piece of land, as you can see here, and this was done in 2011-12. And this was finally entered into the Limca Book of Records, this largest ever experiment conducted by anyone. And some of my friends in the world, for example, CIMMYT, is a big center. CIMMYT is a big center of wheat and maize. Those friends were not able to believe that such a large experiment could be ever conducted. They, in fact, came in large numbers. You can see here, this is the global director of wheat from CIMMYT. They came specifically to visit. This is Professor Deepak Pental, Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, and all others. And we then, by characterizing, developed a reference set of, wheat for terminal heat stress tolerance with so many traits. 3,000 out of 22,000, we selected 3,000, which could be utilized by breeders for developing terminal heat tolerant wheat varieties. And so next one, actually, this was then covered by Times of India, that food security, understanding wheat like never before. This was again, and this is one of the best scientists of wheat in physiology of my own area of research. He specifically came for 2 days from Mexico. I've been to Mexico. It's no less than how many hours? From Paris, it takes about 14 hours, non-stop flight. From here to Paris, it's about, again, 9 hours. You can imagine it's about 24 hours flight time only. And he came only for 2 days from that long a distance to see and believe for himself, yes, that this is possible. And he's having a discussion with me. And since then, he's a good friend of mine. He mentions about it, throughout the world, wherever he goes, and mentions about this kind of research, what we've been doing. And finally, we were able to bring to the world, so this is possible. We published it, in one of the advances in wheat genetics, and out of 22,000 big collection, we narrowed down to 2,000. Now, 2,000 which is manageable. And it is all those genetic diversity which is important and required for any given trait in the wheat improvement. And then finally, you can see here, we were able to develop a composite core set. Composite means there are different species together. It was published in Crop Science. Then we were able to identify new sources of resistance to diseases, for example, rust and spot blotch, which was again published. Then again, new sources of resistance to disease were identified in case of powdery mildew. And these papers were, in fact, we were asked to put it on the cover page. Crop Science invited us to be featured. This our work, as you can see here, it's mentioned, 2 papers on the cover of the Crop Science in 2020. And Professor Swaminathan, he was visiting, he also could not believe. He visited after some time, after a long time. I'm sure you all know about Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. He visited NPPGR, he went back, he wrote me this email. He wrote to me this email that I was happy to visit NPPGR again after some time. And I was certainly happy that you're converting NPPGR to a functional conservation center. And he called it as a revolutionary progress, while welcoming him, about all this. And then finally, now we are talking about, this was all through conventional plant breeding, this could be utilized. But now we are talking about biotechnological tools. What are those? Emerging science-based technologies. Emerging science-based technologies, I want to highlight this message here, that in the coming years, greater emphasis need to be placed to achieve accelerated rate of genetic improvement. We need to achieve accelerated rate of genetic improvement of crops, and high yield to be coupled with increased use efficiency of natural resources like land, water, radiation, fertilizers, chemicals. We need to increase their use efficiency, and also particularly of those shrinking natural resources I just mentioned. Not only increasing the yield, we must combine high yield with this sustainable, increasing the efficiency. So the advances in technology, biotechnological tools, in fact, you all know about genetic engineering, has played already a big role in nationally, internationally. There are about 30 countries, more than 190 million hectares area is under GM crops in the world. In India, of course, only BT cotton. But again, here we can utilize more and more these genetic resources, whether tolerant crops or plant genetic resources, crop oil relatives, for developing superior genotypes. And then this has played such a big role, plant genetic engineering, and this was discovered in 1983. That can you possibly transfer a gene, plant to plant you can transfer by wheat to wheat, but you can't transfer wheat to rice, or rice into banana, or banana into a tree, or bacteria gene into a plant. This was discovered in 1983, first time. 30 years later, you can see here in 2013, these 3 people who did these experiments, Mark von Mentogou from Belgium, then Meridel Chilton, a lady, you see here in the center, from Washington State University in Seattle, USA, and Robert Fraley, one of the private labs in Monsanto. They got a World Food Prize for their discovery. And now what we're talking about is, a Nobel Prize in 2020 of these 2 ladies, I'm sure you all know about it. They discovered the process of genome editing. And through this process of genome editing, and all these biotechnologies now need to be utilized for product development, for agriculture, food, nutrition, not only food, nutrition, agriculture, but also human animal health is very important. And therefore, finally, for sustainable development. And that's what, actually speaking, this technology allows in a big way. I'll give you, I don't want to go. I thought students, they're all here. Maybe I should come some other day to give you and talk about the technology itself. But this is a technology through which we develop, after preparing gene construct, the gene-edited crops. And this is not a genetically modified crop. Remember, genetically modified crops are the ones where we have a foreign DNA present from a bacteria, from any other species. But here, there are no foreign DNA present, and therefore they are not called as genome editing, or they're not called as genetically modified crops or organisms. So at the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, because they did not contain any foreign DNA, we thought they should be exempted from biosafety regulation. And finally, we've succeeded that India exempts SDN1 and SDN2. These are 2 categories of genome edited crops. They are exempted. No biosafety regulation. Biosafety regulation only if it is genetically modified, if there are foreign genes present. Here, there are no foreign genes present. So therefore, India exempted, these 2 categories. And this order came in March 2022. And I was excited like a child. I was so happy because I was instrumental from the National Academy perspective to achieve this success. And I would have WhatsApped in my life to anybody and everybody this particular letter. This is something very important. It says exemption of genome edited crops, under the rules we are talking about it, from Government of India. So for finally, you can see here, there are many other countries who exempted this. they consider them non-GMOs. And these are finally, then I was instrumental also as part of the team to develop these standard operating procedures. It's very easy. I would urge to our Honorable Vice Chancellor to make use of this technology, not only for agriculture, for even human and otherwise, diagnostics and pharma sector. Jamia Hamdard is one of the best universities I know, where we have got all those schools, and it should be utilized more, and we can discuss further in this regard. In India, by 2025, these are the 3 crops. There's an emphasis on developing and genome editing for climate smart agriculture. There are so many different traits. People are now talking about it. And in fact, we are trying to give a message. Germplasm, genetic resources, agrobiodiversity, to genome engineering only is the new route for sustainable green revolution. We need to sustain it. And this is one of the meetings where some of our international friends were also there. This is the Secretary to the Government of India, Dr. Mahapatra, Professor Deepak Pental, we organized it, and we want to convert the information available here in the National Gene Bank through the process of genome engineering, for sustainable development. And this is the route which has been given for different traits. These are the different technologies, improved crops, and for the improved traits, you can make use of it, whether wild species or land races or obsolete and farmers varieties and modern cultivars, all can be now improved directly through the process of genome editing to these improved crops with various traits. And these are some of the crops which the Government of India has prioritized. For example, mustard, soybean, and groundnut being our oilseed crop. Okay, or pulses. I'm sorry whether it's visible or not. This is groundnut, pigeon pea, and green gram. Chickpea, pulses, chickpea, pigeon pea, and green gram. And these are the other crops which are important. We cannot forget rice, wheat, sugarcane, cotton, pomegranate, mango, fruits, and banana and tomato. And we want to combine high yield with shorter duration and high input use efficiency, because we want to move towards, sustainable development and also combining with high, resilience to the climate. We have come up with a paper here, first time again, immediately after March 2022, when we got the orders of exemption. In July 2022, this paper came in Current Science, wherein all these priority crops are given. So what I'm trying to say is, through the process of genome editing, this, technology, this wild rice now can be directly converted into cultivated rice, keeping all those traits of adaptation to climate change. Earlier we were taking genes from here, transferring it, which was a very difficult task. It will take, if I want to convert this wild species to a cultivated type, by nature, it will take thousands of years. Okay, or through process of plant breeding, it will take 20 to 40 years. But through the process of genome editing, it can be done in 2 to 4 years. So that's the beauty of this. So this is the final take-home message, is that we must try to integrate conventional plant breeding with genomics and genome-based editing tools for heralding a new sustainable food production system, keeping in view of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this is what, in fact, I was featured, fortunately, on the cover of this magazine to talk about it, that this technology is so very important, is here to stay, and India must take as much benefit as possible of this technology. So with this, friends, thank you very much. I thought I'll give you a small gist and a glimpse of the whole activity. I will come again, when we have more time to interact with each one of you and give you a message what we want to give you. Thank you very much to the Honorable Vice Chancellor and to Dr. Professor Abdeen for this, and to all you, the faculty members, the students, boys and girls, all of you. Thank you very much for your patience.
Actually, I am just, sir, Dr. Professor Bansal, for your knowledge, and as you have said, we have already started work on genome editing in our lab, and we are actually doing it on some commercial crop, like Stevia ribaudiana, and also on Artemisia annua, which is famous for malaria. So we have already started it, and if someone is interested, can come and learn in the lab.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for such an informative lecture. This talk will surely help and motivate us and encourage us for our future research work. Now, I consider it a great honor to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for his presidential remarks. We need not to say much about sir, as the whole campus is already vibrating and echoing his prominence. With the leaders like a Vice Chancellor, sir, the proverb like action speaks louder than word seems to do justice. So I would like to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir.
Thank you. The Speaker of Excellence, Professor Dr. K.C. Bansal, the former Director of NBPGR, Secretary, National Academy of Agricultural Science, Professor Amjad Abdin, the Director of Center for Environment and Sustainable Development, and dear faculty, research scholar, and students. Today, we all are gathered to celebrate International Day for Biological Diversity organized by the Center in Jamia Hamdard. Uh, on behalf of this center, I welcome Professor K.C. Bansal for this wonderful lecture. But next time when you plan it, it should be in Hall 1, not in Hall 2, because these are the area where students should know that, because in the new education policy, government has emphasis us to create a interdisciplinary center. So this is the first center of interdisciplinary we plan for Center for Environment and Sustainable Development, and we are planning to start some PhD program and MSc program next year. And I am also one of the faculty of this center because STG is very close to my heart. 6-7 years back, I started writing one book with Dr. Sapna is here, like green computing toward the sustainable development. So there is a lot of professors are saying that this is an area where social scientists work. Why you are writing this book for green computing? Then I said that the carbon emission is one of the major factors for even data centers. So data center create a lot of carbon emissions. So we have to, how do you control even in the field of computing, because whole world is now under network. So IBM has started some data center in Siberia, in some cold area. Even Government of India, I suggested them to start in Srinagar, so that the emission of carbon and use of air conditions will be low. So these are the area where now my area, now the STG is one of the most important area where UN is also recognizing that. So the Center for Sustainable and Environment and Sustainable Development, headed by Professor Abdin and his team, is one of the unit of Jamia Hamdard, which is striving to work on the issue of involving climate change and its impact on global food and nutrition security. The center, being interdisciplinary in nature, utilize the expertise and technologies from various disciplines of basic science for sustainability of environmental agriculture to meet the SDG framework, as in the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi. Vision of SESD aim towards meeting the most pressing challenge of the society, such as reduce our environmental footprint, relieve poverty, feed the hungers, use less and cleaner energy, provide clean drinking water, protect biological diversity on land as well as in our ocean. So biological diversity is often understood in the term of wide variety of plant, animals, and microorganisms, but it also includes a genetic difference within each species. For example, the variety of crop and breed of livestock, and the variety of ecosystem, the forest, lake, desert, agriculture landscape, and that most multiple kind of interaction among their members, human, plant, and animals. As Professor Bansal has already mentioned about many crop S1, S2, and government has adopted his proposal. The biological diversity resource are the pillar upon which we build civilizations. The fish provide 20% of animal protein to about 3 billion people. Over 80% of the human diet is provided by plants. As many as 80% of people living in rural areas in developing countries rely on traditional plant-based medicine for basic health care. But loss of biodiversity threatens all, including our health. It has been proven that the biodiversity loss could explain zoonosis disease transmitted from animal to human, while on the other hand, we keep biodiversity intact. It offers excellent tool to fight against the pandemics like those caused like coronavirus. While there is a growing recognition number of species is being significantly reduced by certain human activities, given to celebrate the International Day for Biological Diversity annually. International Day are celebrated to educate the public on issue of concern, to mobilize political will and resource to address the global problems, and to celebrate and reinforce achievements of humanity. As a global community is called to re-examine our relationship to the natural world, one thing is certain: despite of all our technological advance, we are completely dependent on healthy and vibrant ecosystem for our water, food, medicine, clothes, fuel, shelter, and energy, just to name a few. These involve respecting, protecting, and repairing our biological wealth. Undoubtedly, this year is a special in terms of biodiversity conservation. We now have to renewed sense of hope with adoption of Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, a historic agreement signed in December 2022, and sets goal and concentrate measure to stop and reverse the loss of nature by 2050. That is why the theme of International Day for Biological Diversity is form of agreement to action, build back biodiversity. The slogan promotes that the idea that now that we have an action plan agreed upon at a global level, we must implement all the measures that the agreement complete before 2030. Only in this way we'll have to able to obtain the protected and sustainable biological diversity by 2050. This is the main message from the Convention on Biological Diversity and the key international instrument for sustainable development. As Professor Abdin already mentioned, that the slogan promote the idea that now we have an action plan agreed upon at the global level. We must implement all the measures that agreement complete before 2030. Only in this way we will be able to obtain protected and sustainable biological diversity by 2050. That is the main message from the Convention on Biological Diversity, the key international instrument for sustainable development. Today lecture delivered by our speaker, Professor K.C. Bansal, a renowned scientist and the former director of NBPGR, ICAR, and Secretary of the National Academy of Agriculture Science, shed light on biotechnological innovations that can be utilized for utilization of agro-biodiversity for sustainable development. Sir, I am just giving you one example. I am residing in BC Lodge, where I use some biofertilizer for tomato. And last year to this year, our production is 15 times higher.